Welcome to Heartbreak Chronicles. With rain pounding against windows on the streets of Seattle, Nathan Carson stood under his porch, holding a bouquet of daisies and lily of the valley, Elise's favorite flowers. He came home from work early to surprise his wife and celebrate their 7th wedding anniversary. His co-workers in the office laughed at him for being an old-school romantic, but Nathan never cared. He quietly inserted the key into the lock hole, imagining the smile that would cross Elise's face when she saw the bouquet. However, as he gently pushed the door open, what came into his ears was his wife's excited voice. "I don't care what he'll think, Spencer. I've had enough of this." Elise's voice came from the kitchen, her tone firm and cold. "There's nothing he can do about it." Nathan stood still at the porch, rain dripping down his shoulders onto the wood floor. He instinctively kept quiet, not wanting to interrupt the obviously private call. "I'll tell him tomorrow." Elise continues, "I need to live the life I want." Nathan too. "It's too mundane. Can you understand that?" The person on the other end of the line said something that elicited a soft chuckle from Elise. That laugh Nathan hadn't heard in a long time, at least not at him. "I'll see you tonight. I can't wait." The silence that followed the end of the call acted as an invisible wall, completely separating Nathan from life as he knew it. He stood still for a few seconds, trying to comprehend what he had just heard. Then, he gently closed the door, pretending to have just arrived home, and called out, "Elise, I'm home." When he walked into the kitchen, Elise was slipping her cell phone into her pocket, the expression on her face quickly shifting from pleasure to everyday calm. "You're home early today," she commented, a hint of imperceptible displeasure in her tone. "It's our anniversary," Nathan said as he handed over the bouquet, "and I wanted to surprise you." Elise took the flowers. A flicker of guilt flashed across her face, but it quickly disappeared. "Thanks, they're beautiful," she said mechanically, placing the bouquet on the kitchen counter without even bothering to look for the vase. Dinner was served in awkward silence. Nathan tries to open a few conversations, but each ends with a short response from Elise. Her mind was clearly elsewhere, her fingers constantly tapping on the cell phone in her pocket. "What have you been thinking about lately?" Nathan finally asked, looking his wife straight in the eye. "You seem..." "It's far away." Elise put her fork down and took a deep breath. "Nathan, we need to talk." This is the moment, Nathan thought. She's going to admit it. But he just nodded and waited for her to continue. "I'm not happy and have been for a long time." Elise's voice was calm but firm. "Our lives are too mundane and predictable. Same job, same people, same conversation. I'm 32 years old, and I feel like my life is passing me by." Nathan felt a tingle. "I thought we were happy." "We're settled, but not happy." Elise corrected, "There's a difference. There's someone else, right?" Nathan asked directly, his voice calmer than he expected. Surprise flashed in Elise's eyes, as if she hadn't expected him to be so direct. But she quickly regained her composure. "Yes, there is someone else." She confessed, as if relieved, "His name is Spencer. He's an architect I met at an industry conference a few months ago. He understands me in a way you never have." Nathan felt a wave of nausea hit him, and even though he had learned the truth from the overheard phone call, it still shocked him to hear his wife admit it in person. "You guys..." "Yes, we had sex." Elise interrupted him with a hint of provocation in her tone. "It's been a while. I was going to tell you tomorrow, but since you asked..." She looked Nathan straight in the eye. "I'm going to be with Spencer. I'm going to have an affair, and there's nothing you can do about it." In that moment, a variety of emotions tumbled through Nathan: anger, betrayal, sadness, shock. But most surprising of all, underneath all these emotions, he felt a strange calmness. 7 years of marriage, 10 years of relationship, and she just threw it all away so easily. "Okay, honey," he responded calmly, the corners of his mouth even lifting into a small smile. "You win." This was clearly not the reaction Elise was expecting. She blinked in confusion, her prepared arguments and defenses suddenly rendered useless. "That's it?" she asked. "Aren't you going to fight for me?" Nathan stood up and started clearing the dinner plates. "You've made your decision, haven't you? As you say, there's nothing I can do about it." He placed the plate in the sink and turned to face her. "I'll sleep in the guest room, and we'll discuss the specifics tomorrow." That night, lying on the bed in the guest room, Nathan didn't break down as expected. On the contrary, his thoughts were unusually clear. Elise's betrayal is like a mirror reflecting the long-neglected cracks in their marriage. What a match they once were. He, a successful electrical engineer working for an energy company in Seattle. She, a senior interior designer decorating mansions for wealthy local clients. They meet at work, and their shared ambitions and values make them fall in love quickly. The first few years of marriage were blissful. They bought a house together in a Seattle suburb, took memorable vacations, and discussed the possibility of having children, though both decided to focus on their careers first. Nathan worked hard but never neglected his family, always making sure he had time for Elise. He's not a workaholic, just a conscientious professional. But over time, subtle changes began to appear. Elise grows increasingly dissatisfied with their lifestyle, often comparing herself to her friends on social media who seem to lead much shinier lives. She began attending more industry events, coming home later and later, and becoming more perfunctory in her concern for Nathan. The man named Spencer must have been present at one of these events, Nathan thought. An architect, possibly creative and passionate, can provide Elise with the stimulation she feels is missing in her marriage. Nathan rolled over and looked out the window into the rainy night as a plan took shape in his mind. Does Elise think she can betray their marriage with impunity? Did she think she could so easily erase everything they had built together? She was wrong. He would not make a scene, plead with her to stay, or do anything violent or illegal. No, his response will be more carefully planned and more effective. Nathan picked up his cell phone and sent a message to his old friend Marco, a private investigator. Need your help. Can we meet tomorrow morning? It's urgent. The reply came almost immediately. Sure, bro. 9 a.m. at the usual place. Perfect, thanks. Nathan replied, before placing his phone on the nightstand. He closed his eyes, but there was no sleep. Instead, he began to plan every move he would make over the next 24 hours. By this time tomorrow, Elise will realize the gravity of the mistake she has made. The sun was shining through the curtains into the guest room, and Nathan was already awake. In fact, he'd hardly slept at all. When he walked into the kitchen, Elise was getting ready to go out, wearing a new dress he'd never seen before. Where are you going? He asked, no accusation in his voice, just pure curiosity. Elise paused for a moment as if considering whether or not to lie, then decided not to hide it anymore. I'm going to see Spencer. We're going to have brunch, and then I'm not sure when I'll be back. Nathan nodded as if she'd just told him to go to the grocery store. Okay, I have some things to take care of today too. See you tonight. Elise frowned, clearly disturbed by his continued calmness. That's it. No arguments. No pleading. Do you expect me to do that? Nathan asked rhetorically. Elise shook her head and grabbed her purse and keys. No, I guess it's easier this way. She paused for a moment, as if she wanted to say something else, but eventually just turned away. With the door closed, Nathan immediately sprang into action. He takes a quick shower and changes clothes, then drives downtown to meet Marco. At the cafe, he told the old friend the whole situation, and Marco's expression changed from shock to sympathy and finally to professional calm. So you want proof? Marco asked, sipping his black coffee. Accurate evidence, but obtained legally. Nathan emphasized, I don't want to invade her privacy or do anything illegal. It's just a matter of recognizing what has happened and who might be involved. Marco nodded and began listing possible options. We can look at public records, observe behavior in public places, and analyze financial records of your joint accounts. If you have shared cloud accounts or home computers, we can check those. All of this is perfectly legal. For the next few hours, they worked out a detailed plan. Marco will be watching Elise and this Spencer to gather information about their public interactions. In the meantime, Nathan looks through their shared accounts and files for any possible clues. After leaving the cafe, Nathan headed straight for their bank. As a joint account holder, he is entitled to see all transaction records. Statements from the past few months show a series of questionable purchases, expensive restaurants, hotel reservations, and even jewelry store purchases, all of which occurred without his knowledge. Next, he visited a well-advised divorce attorney. After listening to his case, the attorney advised him to preserve all evidence and begin preparing a plan for property division. Washington is a no-fault divorce state, the attorney explains, which means you don't have to prove she had an affair to file for divorce. However, if you can prove that she used community property outside of the marriage, This could affect the property division. Nathan nodded in understanding. He doesn't want to get back at Elise, but he's not going to let her leave the marriage unscathed either. In the afternoon, Nathan returns home, knowing that Elise is probably still out there. He logs into their shared cloud account to view the backed-up photos and information. He did not hack into her personal accounts or devices, and only viewed what he had legal access to. What shocked him was the sheer volume of discovery. There are months of text message backups, photos, and even emails between Elise and Spencer. Their relationship had apparently lasted nearly 6 months, far longer than Nathan had thought. What's even more shocking is that Spencer is not only Elise's lover, but also a client in her business. This touches the boundaries of professional ethics. As he continues to dig deeper, Nathan discovers more disturbing facts. Spencer Williams is a married architect with 2 young children. He promised Elise that he would leave his wife, but based on their recent conversations, that promise seems to have been repeatedly postponed. Marco's text arrived late in the evening with a couple of photos attached. They ate at Four Seasons and then went to the hotel. Is he this guy? The photo shows Elise sitting intimately with a tall blonde man, Spencer, holding hands. Subsequent photos show them entering a hotel elevator with visibly intimate expressions on their faces. Yes, thanks, Nathan replied, the last vestiges of doubt in his mind disappearing. In the evening, Nathan sat in his living room with all the evidence neatly arranged on the coffee table: bank statements, printouts of text message logs, photos, and preliminary divorce papers prepared by his attorney. He poured himself a glass of whiskey and waited for Elise to come home. When she finally returned around 10 p.m., Nathan noticed that her lips were swollen and she had a tiny red mark on her neck. She looked both content and guilty, an ambivalence that turned to alarm at the sight of Nathan sitting in the living room. We need to talk, Nathan said calmly, gesturing for her to sit down. Elise sat cautiously on the couch across from him, noting the papers on the coffee table. What is it? Evidence, Nathan replied simply, of your relationship with Spencer. You've lasted 6 months, haven't you? Elise's face turned white, but she quickly regained her composure. You followed me. No, Nathan corrected. I only checked the information I had access to. Our shared accounts, cloud storage, bank statements. Marco did observe your behavior in public today, but it was perfectly legal. Elise's surprise turned to anger. You have no right to. I have every right to know how my wife betrayed our marriage. Nathan interrupted her, his voice still calm but firm. Not only did you betray me, you used our joint funds to finance your affair. That new dress, those hotel rooms, those expensive dinners, all on our dime. Elise was silent, unable to refute these obvious facts. More importantly, Nathan continued. Spencer is married with 2 children. He keeps promising you he'll leave his wife, but from your conversations, that always seems to get postponed. Surprise flashed in Elise's eyes. How do you know? Like I said, I viewed all the information I have access to. Nathan explains, but that's not the point. The point is that you chose to betray our marriage, and you think you can do so with impunity. So now what? Elise asked, a quiver in her voice. Are you going to get back at me? Nathan shook his head and picked up a file from the coffee table and handed it to her. It's a divorce settlement. I think the terms are fair. You get to keep all of your personal property, and we'll split the joint assets equally, minus the amount you spend on your extramarital relationship. I don't want to hurt you, Elise, but I won't let you use me either. Elise took the file in shock and skimmed through it. You're ready for all this today? Yes, Nathan confirmed. Like you said last night, you're going to have an affair, and there's nothing I can do about it. You're right. I can't stop you from having an affair, but I can decide how to respond. He stood up and downed his whiskey in one shot. There's more tomorrow. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm going to bed. Tomorrow is a long day. As Nathan made his way to the guest room, he could feel Elise's gaze following him, full of confusion and unease. He knew she was expecting anger, pleading, an emotional outburst. But what he gave was calm, a strategy, a reaction she never expected. And with that, the first phase of Nathan Carson's 24-hour program was complete. And that's just the beginning. The next morning, Elise wakes up to find that Nathan has left the house. A brief note was placed on the coffee table. Need to take care of a few things today. Talk in the evening. She felt a pang of unease. Nathan's reaction last night had been completely unexpected. There are no hysterical outbursts, no pleas, not even typical scenes of anger. On the contrary, his calm and methodical nature was almost more disturbing than any violent reaction. Elise picked up her cell phone and sent Spencer a message. "We need to talk. Nathan knows everything." Spencer's reply came quickly, but not in the way she'd hoped. "Not today. There's a meeting. Contact you later." Elise frowned. Over the past 24 hours, Spencer seems to have become more distant since she confessed to Nathan. He was the one who urged her to end her marriage, promising them a better future. But now, when it actually happened, he flinched. Her thoughts were interrupted by the doorbell. Opening the door, she was surprised to find it was the delivery man, holding a formal bundle of papers. "Elise Carson?" The delivery man confirmed. "Yes, it's me. Here are your divorce papers. Please sign them." Elise signed mechanically and closed the door, feeling a wave of vertigo. Did Nathan really act so quickly? She opened the packet of papers and found the complete divorce petition inside, with the same terms as Nathan had shown her last night. She dropped onto the couch, suddenly realizing the reality of it all. She'd always imagined that when she finally decided to leave Nathan, he'd plead with her to stay, promise to change, or at least show some strong desire to save the marriage. But his reaction, this calm, practical, almost businesslike way of dealing with it, made her feel offended. It was as if their 7-year marriage was just a contract to him that could be easily terminated. In the afternoon, Elise's cell phone began to receive a steady stream of messages. First, it was her mother, with obvious disappointment in her voice. "Elise, Nathan came to see us today. He told us what happened. We need to talk." Then her sister, "Did you really betray Nathan? I can't believe it. He showed us all the evidence. How come?" Then came several of her close friends, all expressing similar shock and disappointment. Nathan didn't humiliate her on social media, didn't preach her infidelity to everyone, but he did share the facts with those closest to her, not in retaliation, but to explain the impending divorce. Elise felt a surge of panic. She called Spencer's number, but it went straight to voicemail. She sent him a series of desperate texts, but there was no response. In the late afternoon, she received an email on her work email address from the company's HR department asking her to come to the office for an interview the next day. The email offered no specifics, but the tone was serious. Elise couldn't help but wonder if it had anything to do with her personal situation. When she finally reaches out to Spencer, his demeanor turns decidedly cold. "We need to calm down," he said over the phone. "My wife is getting suspicious, and we can't take any chances right now. Maybe we should keep our distance for now." "What?" "But you said." "I know what I said," Spencer interrupted her, "but now it gets complicated. I need time to think." After the phone hung up, Elise felt a wave of loneliness she'd never felt before. Her marriage is crumbling, her lover is withdrawing, her family and friends are disappointed in her, and even her job may be suffering. And it all happened in just 24 hours. Elise practically sprinted for the door when she heard the front door open. Nathan walks in, looking tired but determined. "What did you do to me?" Elise questioned, her voice shaking with emotion. "You told everyone?" "Not everyone," Nathan corrected. "Just people who need to know. Your family, our mutual confidant. I just tell them the facts without adding any dramatic details or personal judgment." "And you told my company what happened?" "I didn't contact your company directly," Nathan replied. "But Spencer's wife Lauren did call me yesterday. Obviously, she had suspected it for some time and just needed confirmation. We had a very productive conversation." Elise felt the blood recede from her face. "You contacted Lauren?" "No," Nathan corrected again. "She contacted me. She has a right to know what her husband is doing, just as I have a right to know what my wife is doing. I think Lauren may have contacted some of your mutual clients or your company. That's not my decision." Elise dropped onto the couch, suddenly realizing that her carefully constructed new life was rapidly falling apart. Spencer said he needed time to think. She whispered, more like to herself. "I'm not surprised," Nathan commented. There was no gloating in his tone, only weary understanding. "From what I've read, it seems to be a pattern with him. Lauren told me that this wasn't the first time he'd cheated on his wife. Only this time, he chose a married professional as his target, which complicates the situation." Elise looked up with tears and anger in her eyes. "So that's your plan? Take swift action to make sure I have nothing?" "No," Nathan sighed, taking a seat across from her. My plan is simply to make sure that the truth is revealed and that everyone bears the consequences of their actions. You chose to betray our marriage. Spencer chose to betray his family, and those are your decisions. I just choose not to be a victim." He stood up and walked to the kitchen. "I've contacted the realtor. We will sell the house as soon as possible and split the proceeds according to the divorce settlement. I'll be staying at the hotel tomorrow, so you'll have time to organize your belongings." As he walked away, Elise felt a wave of panic like no other. She suddenly realized that in just 24 hours she had lost her husband, possibly her lover, alienated her family and friends, and perhaps even jeopardized her career. And it's all because she thinks Nathan is too ordinary and predictable to provide her with the exciting life she thinks she deserves. Now, watching him calmly prepare a simple dinner in the kitchen, Elise began to wonder if she had been misjudging her husband. Perhaps the real power lies not in outbursts of passion or dramatic promises, but in this quiet dignity, this composure in the face of betrayal. As night falls on Seattle, Elise Carson can't help but wonder what her life will be like when the sun rises again. The next morning, Elise walks into her company's office and feels like everyone is watching her. The HR director's meeting was just as she feared. Spencer's wife, Lauren, had contacted the company to express concern about Elise's inappropriate relationship with a client. Although the company chose not to fire her immediately, she was temporarily reassigned from all Spencer-related projects and received a formal warning. "This isn't just about your personal life, Elise," the HR director said gravely. "It's about professional ethics and the company's reputation." As she left the conference room, Elise felt dizzy. Her professional reputation, everything she had worked so hard to build, was now in jeopardy. She took out her cell phone and tried to contact Spencer again, but there was still no response. At lunchtime, Elise sits alone in a neighborhood cafe, trying to clear her head. Just then she saw Nathan through the window walking across the street, looking tired but determined. Without thinking, she rushed out of the cafe and across the busy street, calling his name. "Nathan, wait." He turned to see her running toward him, her face showing no particular emotion, just polite waiting. "Please," Elise panted, tears in her eyes. "Can we talk? I made a terrible mistake. Spencer doesn't care about me. I don't know what he wants. But I knew I didn't want to lose you or our marriage." Nathan looked at her quietly, a flicker of sympathy in his eyes. "Elise," he said calmly, "this isn't just about Spencer. It's about trust, about respect, about our marriage vows. You chose to break all that, and not only that, but you told me outright that you were ready to betray me, and there was nothing I could do about it. I'm so sorry," Elise pleaded, tears running down her cheeks. "I don't know what I was thinking. I feel trapped and unfulfilled. But now I see how stupid that was." "Maybe you meant it at the time," Nathan said. "Maybe you did think our lives were too mundane, too predictable. Maybe you do need more. The thing is, Elise, I can't trust you anymore. And without trust, marriage cannot exist." "But we can rebuild trust," Elise insisted, reaching out and grabbing his arm. "We can go to counseling. I can prove it to you, Elise." Nathan gently broke away from her hand. "Just 24 hours ago, you were telling me you were going to have an affair, and there was nothing I could do about it. You're right. I can't stop you from having an affair. But I can decide how to respond. That's my response." Elise stood on the sidewalk and felt as if the world was spinning around her. "That's it. That's the end of a 7-year marriage." "It wasn't 7 years of marriage that brought it to an end," Nathan corrected, his voice still calm but firm. "It was 6 months of your deception, your contempt for our marriage." He looked at his watch. "I have to go. There's a meeting. The papers have been served, and if you have any questions, you can contact me through my attorney." Then he turned and walked away, leaving Elise standing on a busy Seattle street in tears, finally understanding the true extent of the devastation she had caused. She had thought Nathan's ordinariness was a weakness, but now she realized that the real strength lay in the dignity and self-control he showed in the face of betrayal. As she watches his back disappear into the crowd, Elise Carson realizes that in just 24 hours, she's lost more than she ever thought possible. Not only her marriage, but her self-esteem, her professional reputation, and the stable life she once took for granted. And all because she pursued a passion that proved to be nothing more than a fantasy. Rain began to fall, as if the Seattle sky was weeping for her loss as well. 6 months later, on a sunny Sunday, Nathan Carson stood on the balcony of his new apartment overlooking the tranquil waters of Puget Sound. The divorce has been finalized, the house has been sold, and the property between him and Elise has been divided as agreed. The legal process went surprisingly smoothly, largely because Elise did not contest any of the terms proposed by Nathan. She seemed to accept it as an inevitable consequence of her actions. They hadn't communicated directly with each other since that day on the street, and all communication had been through their lawyers. He thought of that day from time to time, of the desperation and pleading in Elise's eyes. For a moment, he almost faltered. After all, he had loved her dearly and they had shared 7 important years of their lives. But every time that thought came to him, he remembered her cold declaration, "I'm going to have an affair, and there's nothing you can do about it." And the subsequent discovery of 6 months of deception. There are broken things that can't be repaired, boundaries that have been crossed that can't be redrawn. These last 6 months have been a profound period of rebuilding for Nathan. The first few weeks were filled with pain and sleeplessness. Not because he regretted his decision, but because he had to come to terms with the complete failure of his marriage. He began seeing counseling to learn how to deal with the trauma of this betrayal. Counselor Vanessa helped him understand that his calm reaction was not apathy, but a healthy self-protection mechanism. "You chose dignity over revenge," Vanessa told him in a counseling session, "and that shows your inner strength, not indifference." Work became another pillar for Nathan. He threw himself into a new renewable energy project that required him to fully utilize his professional skills. His supervisor noticed his dedication and innovative ideas and promoted him to project leader 3 months ago. This new role not only brought professional fulfillment, but also helped him redefine his identity, no longer just Elise's husband, but a valued professional. Nathan's cell phone rings with a message from Marco. "Hey bro, don't forget about poker night tonight. We'll meet you at Mike's at 8 o'clock. "Sure, I'll bring beer," Nathan replied, a small smile lifting the corners of his mouth. Over the past few months, he's reestablished his social circle, spending more time with his friends. Marco and a few other friends became his most important support system, providing companionship but never forcing him to talk about things he didn't want to talk about. Weekly poker nights became a ritual to remind him that life goes on and friendships still exist. 3 weeks ago, at Mike's birthday party, he met Rebecca, a pediatrician, smart, independent, and warm. They started dating, and although it's still in the early stages, it has become a warm glow in his life. Unlike Elise, Rebecca seems to genuinely appreciate Nathan's stabilizing qualities rather than seeing them as flaws. Meanwhile, across town, Elise Carson sat in her small rented apartment, staring at a depressing bank statement on the laptop screen in front of her. Since that disastrous breakup, her life has been turned upside down. Spencer completely disappears from her life, abandoning her when she needs support the most. After being rejected by Nathan on the street that day, she called Spencer a dozen times, but it all went to voicemail. Eventually, she received a brief text message. "It's all too complicated. I need to focus on my family. Please don't contact me again." Her career was dealt a fatal blow. While the company initially just gave her a warning, it got worse as time went on. Spencer's wife, Lauren, contacted several mutual clients, suggesting that Elise's professional ethics were in question. One by one, clients are canceling their contracts. 3 months ago, the company demoted her for poor performance and cut her salary. Her once plush office has been relegated to a cramped cubicle, and her former assistant is now a coworker. Every day she walks into the office, she feels the whispers and judgmental glances of her coworkers. "That's the price," her boss said coldly in the demotion meeting. "Once professional credibility is damaged, it takes time to rebuild. You're lucky we didn't fire you." What's worse is the social impact. Even though Nathan never publicly humiliated her, word spread. Many of her friends took Nathan's side and found her behavior inexcusable. What was once a lively social life has become a desert. The invitations stop, the phone stops ringing, and the interactions on social media fade away. She tried contacting a few close friends, but either received a cold response or no reply at all. Her family has not completely alienated her, but their relationship has become strained and filled with unspoken disappointment. Especially since her father, a traditional old-school gentleman, could barely look her in the eye. "We didn't raise you that way," he said during an awkward family dinner before turning away from the table. At that moment, Elise felt more alone than ever. Financial pressures come with the territory. She had to sell her beloved Mercedes for a used Honda. She can no longer afford the fancy boutiques and upscale restaurants she once enjoyed. After paying her apartment rent each month, she has little money left over for other expenses. The worst part is the inner loneliness. There is no Spencer, no Nathan, no real friends, and even relationships with family have become distant. She began to understand the true cost of her behavior. Not just the loss of a marriage, but the loss of her own integrity and the respect and trust others had for her. Elise closes her computer and walks over to the window, looking out at the cityscape. She often wondered if she would make different choices if she could do it all over again. She had once been so sure that Nathan was too ordinary to satisfy her needs, but now she realized that she had mistaken stability for ordinariness and dependability for uninterestingness. She was so focused on the excitement she wanted during that time that she completely ignored the value of the security and unconditional support Nathan gave her. She's tried dating in hopes of finding a new connection, but each time it ends in failure. Either the other person learned about her past and then stopped contacting her, or she couldn't overcome the guilt and insecurity within herself. She'd even tried to contact Spencer a few times, but he was completely closed off to her now, as if she'd never existed. Her cell phone lit up, displaying a message from her sister Olivia. "Does dinner still count tonight?" It's a small ray of hope. Of all the family members, Olivia is the only one willing to try to understand her. Not to forgive or support her behavior, but to understand the internal struggles that led her to make those choices. Elise took a deep breath and replied, "Yes, I'll be there at 7. It was a small gesture of reconciliation, part of the slow process of rebuilding her broken relationships. At least Olivia was willing to try. It's a start, a small but important first step in rebuilding your life. In different corners of the city, Nathan and Elise are both adjusting to their new, separate realities. Their lives are no longer intertwined, but their shared past still influences their present and future. That night, Elise spent a surprisingly warm evening at her sister's house. Olivia didn't accuse, just listened patiently. With the help of a few glasses of red wine, Elise finally speaks the words that have been buried in her heart. "I didn't understand what I was thinking," she admitted, tears glistening in her eyes. "I had a loving husband, a good job, a wonderful home. But I still don't think it's enough. I always think that life should be more exciting and meaningful than that." Olivia was silent for a moment, then asked softly, "Have you ever thought that maybe that desire for more isn't about Nathan or your marriage, but about you?" The question was like a blow to the head. Yes, maybe the problem was never that Nathan was too ordinary, but that she herself couldn't face herself in her ordinary life. She's been looking for excitement and recognition externally, instead of finding peace and fulfillment internally. "I think I need professional help," Elise said eventually, feeling a strange sense of relief. "I need to understand why I made those choices." Olivia took her hand and nodded. That would be a start. 2 weeks later, Nathan was on his way home from work when he received an unexpected phone call. "It's Lauren Williams, Spencer's wife." "Nathan," her voice sounded strained. "I'm not sure I should be making this call, but I thought you should know." "What happened?" Nathan asked, feeling a twinge of unease. "Spencer's at it again," Lauren explained, a weary anger in her voice, this time with his new assistant. "I found texts and emails. As STH. It's like the same pattern as last time with Elise. Exactly the same, secret meetings, the same promises, even the same words. It's like he has a cheating script." Nathan frowned, unsure why she was telling him this. "Lauren, I'm sorry to hear this, but dash. I know it's none of your business," Lauren interrupted, her voice becoming firm. "But what I'm trying to tell you is that I'm leaving him. This time it's for real. I've already started talking to lawyers and preparing documents. I've had enough of being betrayed over and over again. I wanted to thank you for your candor 6 months ago. Without you, without the courage to see how you handled the situation, I might still continue to forgive him and continue in this cycle." Nathan was silent for a moment, feeling a mixture of emotions. Not the thrill of revenge, but a strange sense of connection, knowing that your actions may have helped another. "You made the right decision, Lauren. You deserve better." "Yes, I know." Her voice firmed up a bit. I just want you to know that your actions not only affected your own life, but gave me the courage to face the truth. Spencer has always been that way. I just choose to close my eyes to it. But seeing how you stood firm for your dignity, it gives me strength. Nathan remembered himself 6 months ago, standing on the porch that rainy night, hearing his wife's betrayal. The pain was so real at the time, but now, knowing that my experience may have helped another person brings an unexpected peace. If you need any help or support, he said sincerely, please feel free to contact me. Thanks, Lauren replied, a hint of a smile in her voice, but I think I'll be okay. Just like you, I have the support of friends and family. In fact, I've started seeing a counselor, which is really helpful. After hanging up the phone, Nathan sat in his car for a while, deep in thought about the strange turns life had taken. 6 months ago, he was betrayed and felt lost and alone. Now, his experience is helping another person out of a similar situation. It wasn't the result he'd expected, but it gave him an unexpected comfort. After hanging up, Nathan felt a strange calm. When he first decided how to respond to Elise's betrayal, he was simply trying to protect his dignity and make sure she understood the consequences of her actions. He never anticipated the ripple effect it would have on others. The next day, Nathan receives an unexpected email at lunch. It's from Elise. The subject is closing the loop. Nathan, I'm not sure if you'll read this email, but I need to express some thoughts. The last 6 months have been a period of deep reflection for me. I've lost so much: our marriage, my professional reputation, some of my closest friendships, even my own self-esteem. These losses were the result of my own choices, which I can now wake up to. I used to think you were too ordinary to fulfill my needs. I crave more excitement, more passion, more unpredictability. But in pursuing that, I undermined what really mattered: trust, honesty, loyalty, respect. I'm not asking for a second chance. I understand that bridge has been burned and cannot be rebuilt. But I want you to know that your reaction, your calmness, your dignity, the way you insisted that I take responsibility for my choices, taught me an important lesson. True power lies not in impulse or control, but in integrity and self-respect. You have shown much more power than I ever misunderstood as mundane. I just wanted to say that I'm sorry, not just for the betrayal, but for the years of not really seeing and appreciating who you are. Good luck, Nathan. I hope you find the happiness you deserve. Elise. Nathan read the email and felt a wave of mixed emotions well up in his chest. Not anger or sadness or even nostalgia, but a strange calmness, a feeling of closure. He won't reply to this email. There's no need. Their stories are over and their separate paths have parted. But knowing that Elise had at least learned something from the experience gave him a subtle sense of satisfaction. In the evening, Nathan has dinner with Rebecca at a new restaurant. She is a pediatrician with a warm smile and a keen eye for detail. They met through a mutual friend at Mike's birthday party and had been dating for a few weeks. Unlike Elise, Rebecca seems to genuinely appreciate Nathan's stability and dependability, seeing it as a strength rather than a weakness. I like to know that you'll show up on time, she once told him. I like to know that your words carry weight and that your promises are true. In my world, dealing with so much uncertainty, sick kids, worried parents, it's a comfort, not a bore, to have a reliable person in my life. Nathan remembers that he could barely speak at the time. After the pain of being seen as too ordinary, it is such a different experience to be appreciated for the same qualities. You seem preoccupied today, Rebecca commented now, studying his expression. Did something happen? Nathan considered for a moment and thought of Lauren's call. He hesitates to share the past, fearing it will overshadow a new relationship. But he also promised himself that he would no longer hide important things. I got a call today from Spencer's wife, he said finally, his voice quiet. The one with Elise. You know that. Rebecca's expression became concerned, but not gossipy. Why did she contact you? Nathan explains the situation, about Spencer cheating again, about Lauren's courage in deciding to leave, and how she appreciates his example. As he uttered these words, he felt an unexpected calmness rather than the expected pain. It made me think, he concluded, that sometimes our actions affect people we never expected. I never thought the way I handled that disaster would help anyone else. Rebecca reached out and took his hand, understanding and respect shining in her eyes. You know, that's one of the things I admire about you. The way you face betrayal and pain, choosing dignity over revenge. That takes real power. She paused and gave him a warm smile. And, I'm sorry, I know it's cheesy, but I think your ex-wife is a fool for not seeing what she has. Nathan felt a warmth well up in his chest. With Rebecca, he can talk openly about the past without fear of being judged or misunderstood. She didn't either avoid the subject or get overly curious about the details, as many did. She simply accepts it as part of his history, neither defining him nor eliminating it. You know, she said, changing the subject with a hint of playfulness in her eyes. I've been thinking about that weekend trip to the Oregon coast we discussed. I checked, and there are a couple of nice cabins available for booking next month. Ocean view, fireplace, serenity. Nathan smiled, feeling a sense of long overdue anticipation. It's not just about the anticipation of the trip, but the anticipation of the future, the anticipation of the possibilities. That sounds great. Let's do it. As dinner continued, their conversation naturally turned to other topics: her work, his projects, mutual friends, favorite books. It was in that moment that Nathan realized he was experiencing what a healthy relationship should feel like. Mutual respect, honest communication, genuine interest, not one partner trying to change or control the other. It felt so different and so refreshing compared to the last years of Elise's relationship. As the dinner continues, Nathan realizes that even though his marriage to Elise ended in pain, that experience shaped him and taught him important things about himself: his worth, his boundaries, and the type of respect he demands. These lessons will follow him into any future relationships. A week later, Elise was sitting in Counselor Anna's office for her first appointment. With Olivia's encouragement, she finally admitted that she needed professional help to understand her behavioral patterns. Why come for help now? Anna asked gently, an older lady with a non-judgmental curiosity in her eyes. Elise took a deep breath and tried to organize her thoughts. I destroyed my marriage, she confessed. I betrayed a loving husband by chasing after someone who ultimately didn't have any real feelings for me. I lost almost everything that was important to me: my marriage, my professional reputation, my friends. And the worst part is that I don't fully understand why I did that. The counseling process is painful, but also enlightening. Over the next few weeks, Elise begins to dissect her long-standing issues of insecurity and self-worth that far predate her marriage to Nathan. She began to understand how she constantly sought external validation, tying her self-worth to the approval of others. I've been looking for someone else to fill the hole inside me, she realized in her fourth counseling session. First Nathan, then Spencer. But that hole can only be filled by me. Meanwhile, her professional situation continues to deteriorate. The company completed its reorganization and her position was eliminated completely. She was forced to accept severance pay and become a freelance designer, but few clients wanted to work with her. Her savings were dwindling rapidly, and she had to consider more radical changes. It was then that an unexpected opportunity presented itself. Her cousin runs a small but successful interior design firm in Denver and needs an experienced designer. No one here knows about your past, her cousin said over the phone, and it can be a real fresh start. That night, Elise made her decision. There's nothing left in Seattle to keep her. Her marriage is over, her career is dead here, her social circle is gone. Maybe it's time to start over completely. 2 weeks later, on a rare sunny day, Elise was packing for her trip to Denver the next day. Her apartment has been emptied and most of the furniture has been sold or donated. Only a few boxes and suitcases remained, marking a new chapter in her life. Next to her laptop sat a photo, a picture of her and Nathan in happier times, taken in Hawaii on their honeymoon. She took the photo in her hands and stared at it for a long time. She was going to take it with her as a reminder, but now she decided to leave it behind. Sometimes the best way to move forward is to let go completely. She picked up her cell phone and took one last look at the email sent to Nathan. There was no reply, and she wasn't expecting one. She deleted the email and then deleted his contact information. Closing the loop has been completed. It's time to write a new chapter. But before she left Seattle, she had one last thing to do. She drove to the neighborhood of the house she and Nathan used to share. She wasn't going to go near the house itself. It had been sold and belonged to strangers, but she wanted to walk around the neighborhood of the life she had so easily abandoned as a final goodbye. As she strolled through the familiar neighborhood, the autumn sunlight shed dappled light through the leaves. Everywhere here is filled with memories. The house they chose together, the garden they planted together, the countless mornings and nights they spent together. It all seems like yesterday and a lifetime ago. Turning the corner, she stopped abruptly. Not far away, outside the cafe, sat Nathan and a lady she didn't recognize. They seemed happy and close, reveling in each other's company. Nathan's smile was natural and genuine, the kind of smile she'd barely seen in the last months of their marriage. Elise stood still, feeling a wave of mixed emotions: sadness, remorse, but strangely enough, a touch of relief. Nathan looks good and seems to have moved on. It should have made her jealous or bitter, but instead it gave her a strange kind of peace. Maybe this is how things should end. She didn't approach or allow herself to be noticed. Instead, she turned gently, got back in her car, and drove to the other side of town. Tomorrow, she will leave Seattle for a new life. And Nathan will stay here and move on with his life, probably with the lady who seems to really appreciate him. That's just the way life works. People come and go, relationships form and break down, and everyone has to live with the consequences of their choices. On opposite ends of the Seattle spectrum, Nathan and Elise are confronted with the consequences of their actions and their choices. One chooses loyalty, one chooses betrayal. One maintains dignity, one loses respect. But both learned profound lessons about marriage, honesty, and, most importantly, about themselves. Nathan learns that his value does not depend on the approval of others, that he maintains his dignity and boundaries, and that he maintains his integrity in the face of betrayal. Elise, on the other hand, learns even more painful lessons about the consequences of behavior, about things of true value, about the necessity for self-worth to come from within rather than from external validation. She loses a real love and chases a passion that ultimately proves to be an illusion. But in the process, she also discovers an inner truth she needs to face. Rain began to fall in Seattle once again, washing over the city as it washed over the memories of the past. In a city where it rains forever, two people who once loved each other are now on different paths, forever changing the course of each other's lives. Maybe someday, when the wounds don't hurt so much, when the lessons have been fully absorbed, they'll meet on some random occasion, a meeting, a wedding, or just down the street somewhere. They would nod politely, maybe exchange a few greetings, and then continue on their respective paths. There is no more love or hate, only a calm acceptance of what was once a shared experience. Until that day, they will move on, taking their respective lessons with them and hopefully doing better in their future relationships. Because that's how life works. We fall, we learn, we grow, and then we move on and hopefully become better versions of ourselves. That's the end of today's story. For more captivating tales, hit subscribe and never miss an episode.